Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. Kurt Schlichter is senior columnist at townhall.com, and I wanted to talk to him today because a piece he wrote about dumb and corrupt cops caught my eye. Here is the opening sentence of that piece from last week. As conservatives, we pride ourselves on our unwavering support of the thin blue line, on backing our cops against leftist slander, and yet stupid and evil people in law enforcement are putting that default thumbs up from normal Americans at risk. So, Kurt, why is that happening?
Yeah, that is a great question. There's a couple reasons. First, we have a bunch of cops who are refusing to do their duty and say, hey, I'm not going to enforce insane and possibly illegal rulings in light of the COVID virus. But we also have a problem with corrupt ones, and we're seeing that with the Mike Flynn thing. These guys hid evidence. They essentially perjured themselves. They essentially tried to frame somebody. Sadly, too many people seem to think that's A-okay.
So these various cases, and we've seen these videos of, police arresting the mother on the playground, the surfer in California who was, surrounded by boats. There's all of these cases, and you look at these and you say, you take the surfer, for example, or the paddle boarder, and he's literally in the ocean, no one around, and you have these boats come flying up. You have the police waiting for him on the side on the beach, and then they violate their own social distancing orders by arresting him. What do you think is the motivation behind this? They say that they're enforcing these social distancing orders, but what do you think is the motivation behind all of this?
I think far too many cops are, well, first of all, I think a lot of people just like exercising power. And the exercise of power is something that's a very, very important and very sensitive issue. The simple fact is that the police have a specific role in our society, and they've got to be very circumspect when they use it. And when they start bothering normal people doing normal things, they're going to lose credibility. Look, like we as conservatives have been very, very much backing the police. Just back them, almost by reflex. Well, this kind of nonsense is really going to endanger the kind of support police have been having. For instance, today I saw on Twitter, where I occasionally visit, some woman walking in the subway without a mask, and a bunch of cops start slapping her and grabbing her in front. Okay, there's no call for that. And if you do that, you're going to lose the support of the people who back you. The left already hates them. The left already despises them.
Right. Where does the accountability lie in an example like that?
I think they've got to use some common sense. And sometimes it's the leadership that's silly. And sometimes it is the people themselves who are silly, and the officers themselves. And we've got to get to a place where officers understand, I'm just not going to be part of this silliness. And of course, there are problems with that when the cops decide which rules they are and proclamations they are and aren't going to be. There's no time when it's okay to go and tackle somebody because they're not wearing a mask. All right. That's just not okay. And we've got to see that and understand.
So when an incident like that happens, again, where is the accountability? Where does the accountability come from? Is that a city council has to step in, or a mayor has to step in and say, that is not how we're going to do things? Is it a state legislature? I don't think it should be the federal government.
I think we have to hold our elected officers accountable at all times. And I think that we need to understand that the most important issue is electoral accountability. That is, are we going to hold our leaders responsible? I mean, how many people do you know who go out and vote in local elections? Well, it's just not that many. Not that many people go out and vote in local elections. How many times have we had local elections with a turnout of like 5%? Mm-hmm. These are the people who are making these rules. These are people who need to be held accountable, and they need to be held accountable to us. Democracy is a participatory sport. We all have to be part of it. And if we're all there and we're all participating and we're all watching, the government's going to be more responsive, and it's going to be less likely to engage in this nonsense because it knows its voters are going to hold them accountable.
And we're seeing this, I think, in some instances, in Michigan, for example, where I live, and where this show is broadcast. There have been a number of sheriffs who have come out. In fact, I wrote about one yesterday in Livingston County, which is near Lansing, and he very thoroughly articulated why his agency, his county, will not be enforcing Governor Gretchen Whitmer's executive orders because they're vague, they're not concise, they're very confusing, and he has been told by his local prosecutor that, you know, it's pretty dicey. If you arrest someone or you ticket someone and it ends up in court and I'm in front of a judge, it's going to be pretty dicey. And the chances of actually getting a conviction or some sort of justice, you know, is not real high. And so, you know, maybe that's what needs to happen in these local communities in California or wherever else, where you're seeing this sort of very heavy-handed reaction, pulling people off of buses or, you know, arresting mothers at the playground. Or there was another video of officers literally chasing somebody running on the beach. And, of course, the runner, you know, outrun the officer. But I think it seems to me that's what needs to happen is there needs to be, you know, people need to be showing up to their city council and getting politely in the face of the mayor and saying, you know, you need to rein in these police because they're totally out of control.
Exactly. That's exactly what needs to happen. And it isn't. This isn't what's been going on to the extent that it needs to. Now, you've mentioned some examples, but in other places, you know, especially big cities, you have police and sheriffs who are very tied into the largely Democrat establishment, and they're just going along.
Hmm.
And look what you have. So you have a mom in front of her kid getting tackled by 3 cops because she's not wearing a mask right on the subway. And of course, cops aren't wearing masks right either.
Do you see this? Is there an erosion, do you think, of civil liberties? And is this going to stop when, you know, all of these lockdowns end? Or do you think this is sort of a trajectory that our society is on?
I think a lot of people are enjoying this way too much and will try and continue it. Here's the question: are we going to tolerate? Are we going to tolerate a system where we are not treated by the law enforcement people who work for us appropriately? And I think the answer is I don't know what the answer is. I think a lot of conservatives are getting more willing to question whether, you know, law enforcement is acting correctly. And that's kind of unprecedented. That's kind of unusual.
Yeah, I agree. Kurt Schlichter, townhall.com. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Going from fighting a real-life big mother to a virtual big brother. For more of my work, go to Breitbart.com or find me on Twitter, Kyle Olson 4, KYLEOLSON and the number 4. Stay with us on The Kyle Olson Show.